I want to start by telling you that I am not someone who has ever chased this kind of thing. I have never been to a ghost tour, never tried a Ouija board, never gone looking for anything I could not explain. Before what I am about to describe, I was the kind of person who heard a ghost story and immediately looked for the logical explanation. I did not disbelieve in a hostile or aggressive way. I just figured the world was complicated enough without adding things that could not be measured or tested. That was where I stood for the first 12 years of my life, and it is where I stood right up until one ordinary afternoon in the summer when everything shifted. I grew up in the same house from the day I was born until I left for college. A normal house, in a normal neighborhood. 2 stories, a yard, the kind of place where nothing interesting happens and you never feel anything except safe. My bedroom was on the 2nd floor and had an attached bathroom, and that bathroom had a window that looked down over the backyard. I had spent 1,000 afternoons in that backyard without ever once looking up at that window and feeling anything except the normal blankness you feel when you look at a window in your own house. That summer, I was 12 years old, and I was out in the yard on the trampoline by myself. It was late afternoon, warm and quiet, the kind of summer afternoon that feels endless when you are a kid. I had been out there for a while, not really thinking about anything, just bouncing and looking up at the sky. At some point, I looked back at the house the way you do when you are in the yard, just a glance toward where you came from, and I saw a woman standing in my bathroom window. She was wearing a white dress, and she was looking down at me from that window, and as I looked at her, she raised her hand and waved. Slow and deliberate, not the kind of wave you give someone you are saying goodbye to. The kind of wave you give when you want the other person to see that you see them. A specific, intentional wave. And I waved back without thinking about it, because my brain had already decided it was my mother. Because who else would be standing in my bathroom window in the middle of a weekday afternoon? I got off the trampoline and went inside to see what she wanted. The house was empty. I went upstairs first, straight to my room and the attached bathroom. Both empty, exactly as I had left them. I went back down and went through every room on the ground floor. Kitchen, living room, the small office my parents used. Empty throughout. I went to the garage, and my mother's car was not there. She had been out since before I went outside. I sat down at the kitchen table and I thought about what I had seen, and I tried to find the ordinary explanation for it. A trick of the light. A reflection of something in the yard that had looked from a distance like a figure in a window. The more I tried to make those explanations work, the less they worked. I had seen a woman standing in that window. I had seen her look at me. I had seen her wave, and I had waved back at her. And she had been close enough to the glass that I could see the white of her dress clearly. My mother came home about 40 minutes later. I met her at the door, and I told her what had happened, that I had seen her in the bathroom window, that she had waved at me, that I had come inside to find her, but the house was empty. I was describing it in the matter-of-fact way that kids describe things, not particularly scared, just confused, and I watched my mother's face do something unusual while I was talking. It was a very brief thing, a shift in her expression that she got under control quickly, but not quickly enough. Something between recognition and something I would later identify as the look of a person who has just heard something they had hoped never to hear. She told me it was not her. She told me she had been out since before I went outside, which I already knew. And then she was quiet for a moment, in a way that felt like she was deciding something. And then she told me that she had seen a woman in that same bathroom window twice when she was growing up in the same house. The same window, the same white dress. I did not say anything. I do not think I knew what to say. She told me that my grandmother, her mother, who had also grown up in that house a generation before her, had seen the same woman. My grandmother was still alive at this point, and I called her that same evening and asked her directly. She did not seem surprised that I was asking, She confirmed it. She said she had seen the woman twice, both times as a child, both times in the bathroom window of that upstairs bedroom, and both times the woman had waved at her slowly, in exactly the way I described. 3 generations of women in the same family, living in the same house at different points, across several decades, each of them seeing the same woman in the same window. None of them had ever told the others until now. My mother had seen her as a child and had not told my grandmother, and my grandmother had seen her as a child and had not told her own mother. Each of them had carried it separately, probably for the same reason. I almost did not say anything, because there is no good way to say this kind of thing. Because the person you are saying it to will do the same thing you do when someone says it to you, which is, look for the ordinary explanation. We eventually tried to find out who she was. My mother went through what records she could access about the history of the house and the people who had lived there before us. The house was old enough, and record-keeping in our town had been inconsistent enough that she could not trace everyone. She never found anyone who seemed like a clear match. No woman who had died there, no obvious reason for a recurring presence. What I have never been able to let go of, the detail that comes back to me most often when I think about this, is the wave. Not just that she waved, but the specific quality of it. Slow, deliberate, intentional, not distressed, not warning me of anything, just making sure I saw her. Like she had been waiting for a moment when someone looked up and she wanted to be acknowledged. My mother said the same thing about her own experiences. My grandmother said the same thing. None of us was frightened in the moment, which is strange because you would think we would have been. There was something in the quality of her presence that was not threatening. She was just there, in that window, and she wanted someone to know she was there. I am in my early 20s now. I still go home to visit, and I still sleep in that room. The bathroom is right there, the window right where it has always been, visible from my bed. I have not seen her again since that afternoon. But I look at that window when I wake up in the middle of the night, and I look at it when the light is on in the bathroom and throwing a faint rectangle of yellow onto the ceiling. I am not scared when I look. I am just careful, and I think about my grandmother seeing her, and my mother seeing her, and me seeing her, all of us waving back at a woman in a white dress who just wanted someone to know she was still in that house. I do not know who she is. I do not know why she stays. But she has been in that house for at least 3 generations of my family, and she has not harmed any of us, and I have made a kind of peace with that. She is just part of what the house is. I can see that window from where I am sitting right now. Let me tell you what kind of person I was before we moved into that house, because I think it matters for understanding how significant it is that I am telling you this at all. I was 32 years old. I had a degree in biology and had spent several years working in a field that required me to look at the world in terms of evidence and reproducible results. I was not aggressively dismissive of people who believed in paranormal things, but I was privately skeptical in the specific way that a science background tends to make you, which is that you do not dismiss experience, but you look very hard for the mechanism before you accept that the mechanism cannot be found. I had never had any experience in my own life that gave me reason to question that framework. I did not expect that to change. We moved into the house when my youngest child was 12 weeks old. We had saved for years for that down payment, and I still remember standing in the kitchen on move-in day, feeling a happiness that was almost embarrassing in its intensity. It was a real house, a yard, a neighborhood, rooms for the kids, space for a life, everything we had been working toward. The first thing happened about 3 weeks in. I was in the kitchen making dinner on an ordinary weeknight. My husband was not home yet. The kids were occupied, and the ceiling fan in the kitchen turned on by itself. I stood there looking at it. I went through the obvious possibilities. Had I brushed the pull chain by accident? I checked. I had not been near it. Was there a draft? All the windows and doors in the room were closed. Was there a wiring issue that could cause it to activate without input? I did not know enough about electrical systems to rule that out, and I made a note to check it. 3 days later, on a warm afternoon when the air conditioning had not been running at all, the AC came on by itself. I stood in the kitchen again and felt the cold air coming through the vents, and I thought about the fan, and I upgraded my note from check it to call an electrician. The electrician came and spent about 2 hours going through the relevant systems. He found nothing wrong, nothing that would account for either incident. He said both systems were functioning normally, and both were wired correctly. He could not explain what I had described. After that, there was a quiet period, and I almost convinced myself that those two incidents had been some kind of electrical anomaly that simply had not happened again. I went back to living in the house normally, and mostly I was happy in it, and I did not think about the fan or the air conditioning very much. Then, I started noticing the back half of the house. There is no other way to describe it than this. The back section of our house felt different. Not dramatically different. Not cold or dark or anything that you could point to and call evidence of something. Just a quality in the air back there that the rest of the house did not have. Heavy is the word I kept coming back to. Occupied. Like the back rooms had a particular density that the front of the house did not have. Like the air was slightly thicker there. Like you were sharing the space with something that was present in a way that was not quite physical. I started avoiding the back rooms without fully registering that I was doing it. We had a guest room back there and a small sitting room that we did not use much, and I found myself spending my time in the front of the house. The kitchen, the living room, our bedroom. I did not think about why. I just found that when I had the choice between passing through the back of the house and not passing through the back of the house, I chose not to. Then my friends started noticing. The first time it happened was with a friend I had known for years, someone who had been to dozens of different houses with me, and who had never once commented on the feel of a space. She came for dinner one evening, and at some point she wandered into the back section to look around the way people do when they are in a house for the first time. She came back to the kitchen looking slightly different, and she said, without any prompting or context from me, that whoever was back there was not happy. She said it the way you say the temperature in a room is cold, factual, observational. Then she sat down at the table and we had dinner, and she did not bring it up again. I did not tell her about the fan or the air conditioning. Over the 9 years we lived in that house, 4 other people made comments about the back rooms without any prior knowledge of how I felt about them. Different people, different visits, different conversations. All of them described variations of the same thing. A heaviness. A sense that someone was back there who did not particularly want them to be. One friend walked back to use the bathroom and returned to the living room quickly and said something that I have thought about many times since. He said, "I don't know what's going on back there, but it feels like someone's watching." The thing that I found most consistent across all the years we lived there was the response to renovations. Anytime we did work on the house, any remodeling, any significant structural change, the back rooms would feel worse for a period afterward. Not dramatically worse, just that quality cranked up slightly. I started thinking of it as whoever was back there registering the change and not liking it, as if the house, or something in the house, had its own preferences about how things should be arranged, and it made those preferences known in the only way available to it. The most striking moment in all 9 years came near the end of our time there. We had a new front door being installed, and the carpenter working on it came back the second morning of the job and mentioned a dream he had had that night. He described it the way people describe dreams, with mild amusement at how strange it was, and said that he had dreamed about our house and that in the dream a ghost kept bothering him while he was trying to do the installation. He described this ghost as a cranky old man who did not want the work done. He laughed at how specific the dream had been. I did not tell him about 9 years of avoiding the back half of my own house. I thanked him for the information, and he went back to work. We moved when my youngest was 9 years old. Within 2 weeks of moving into our new house, that child was sleeping through the night consistently for the first time in his life. He had not slept through the night once in 9 years. We had taken him to doctors, changed his diet, tried every approach recommended to us. Nothing worked while we lived in that house. 2 weeks after we left, the problem resolved on its own and has not returned. I do not know what was in that house. I can tell you what I believe, which is that something was there before we moved in and was still there when we left, and that it had opinions about us being there and about what we did with the space. I believe it was old, whatever it was, and that it had been in that house for a long time and had decided how things should be. I hope whoever lives there now has made their peace with the back rooms. I hope their kids sleep. This is the hardest story I have ever tried to put into words, and I have tried many times, because it has 2 parts that pull in completely different directions. The first part is one of the most frightening things I have ever experienced. The second part is the reason I am still here to tell it. I was 7 years old. My parents had recently separated, and my mother had moved my younger sister and me into a second-floor apartment in an older building in a new neighborhood. We had a bedroom that my sister and I shared. My mother had the other one, and the apartment was quiet in the way that new spaces are when you are still learning their sounds. We had been there about a month when I first noticed something was wrong. Wrong is not exactly the right word. Something was present. That is closer to the truth. There was a quality to our bedroom at night that was different from any bedroom I had slept in before. A kind of awareness in the space that I could not name at 7, but that I felt clearly every time the lights went off. Not a malevolent awareness. Not something that felt threatening. Just present in a way that made the room feel occupied, even when I knew it was just my sister and me. About 5 weeks into living there, I woke up in the middle of the night and saw a man standing at the foot of my bed. I am going to describe this as precisely as I can, because the details matter, and I have gone over them so many times that I am confident in what I saw. He was a man, clearly, and specifically a man, with the height and build and posture of a person in maybe their 50s or 60s. He was not entirely solid in the way that a living person standing in a room is solid. He had a quality to him like something seen through glass that is very slightly frosted, defined and present, but with the edges not completely sharp. He was not young. He had a kind face. That is the detail that comes back most consistently when I try to remember this, and the detail that I think explains why I did not scream when I saw him. His face was kind. He was standing at the foot of my bed looking at me, and his face was kind, and something in me recognized that quality before any of the fear kicked in. I watched him for a while. He did not move or speak. My sister was asleep in her bed on the other side of the room, and I thought about waking her, but I did not. I did not want to interrupt whatever this was, in a way that might make it hostile. I just watched him, and eventually, with him still standing there, I fell back asleep. He came back the next night, and the night after that, and for 4 months he came back every night and stood at the foot of my bed and looked at me and was quiet and still, and the face was always kind, and after the first 2 nights, I was no longer frightened by him. I was accustomed to him the way you become accustomed to anything that is present and consistent and does not harm you. I did not tell my mother, I did not tell my sister, I did not tell anyone. It felt like something I was not supposed to share, which I recognize sounds strange, but is the honest truth about how it felt at the time. Then, one night, around the 4-month mark, he woke me up. That was the first time he had ever done anything other than stand still at the foot of my bed, and it jolted me awake in a way that was different from the calm waking I had done on the other nights. I was fully alert immediately, heart going, the specific alertness of someone who has been woken by something unexpected. He was in the same place, but Something about the quality of his presence was different, more immediate somehow, more urgent. And then he said something. He said, "He is coming. Get out now." His voice was not a voice the way your voice or my voice is a voice. It was more like a sound that arrived in my head as language, that I understood as words without being entirely sure I had heard them through my ears. But the meaning was completely clear. He is coming. Get out now. I went to my mother's room and I woke her up and I told her I had a bad feeling and I needed us to leave. I did not tell her why. I did not tell her about the man. I just said I had a bad feeling, and she looked at my face and she got up. She got my sister up. She packed us a bag in about 10 minutes, which is the kind of thing my mother was capable of when she looked at her child's face and decided to trust what she saw there. We drove to my grandmother's house and spent the night. When we went back the next morning, we found that someone had broken into the apartment overnight. They had come in through a back window and gone through every room. Our rooms had been searched. The police said from the scene that they believed the person had been looking for someone, not for valuables. Looking for someone. I never saw the man again after that night. Not once. Not a sense of him. Not a shadow. Not a feeling of presence in that bedroom. Whatever he had been doing there for 4 months ended on the night he told us to leave. He did what he came to do, whatever that was, and then he was gone. I have spent years trying to find out who he was. I have tried to find records on the apartment, on the building, on anyone who might have lived in that space before us. I have found nothing that clearly connects to what I saw. I do not know his name. I do not know why he was there, or how long he had been there before we moved in. I do not know how he knew what was coming. What I know is that a man I could not explain stood at the foot of my bed every night for 4 months without harming me. And then on the one night it mattered, he told me to get out of the building, and we got out, and something very bad came through our window looking for someone that was no longer there. He warned us. That is what I know. Whatever he was, whatever the right word is for the kind of presence he was, he warned us. And I am here because my 7-year-old self looked at a strange man standing in her bedroom in the dark and decided, on some instinct I cannot fully account for, that he was not there to hurt her. I was right.